You know that moment when you check your savings account and see $847 sitting there, and instead of feeling proud, you just feel defeated. Like you're throwing pennies into the Grand Canyon hoping it'll eventually fill up. You've been saving for months, maybe even a year, cutting back on coffee, skipping dinners out, living like a financial monk, and for what? A number that couldn't even cover a decent emergency, let alone make you feel wealthy. Meanwhile, your friend with zero savings just bought a new PlayStation and seems genuinely happier than you do. And you start thinking, what's the point? Why am I torturing myself for this pathetic pile of cash that feels about as powerful as a wet napkin in a hurricane? My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why smart people make terrible financial decisions. If you're someone who's been trying to save money but keeps wondering if you're just wasting your time, or if you've ever felt like your savings account is where money goes to die slowly and meaninglessly, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here's the brutal truth that no financial guru wants to admit. Saving money before you hit $10,000 doesn't feel like building wealth. It feels like playing defense against a world that's actively trying to rob you. And there's a psychological reason why this happens that explains why most people give up on saving long before they ever see real results. Let me paint you the real picture of what early stage saving actually looks like. You save $300 and you feel pretty good about yourself. Then your car needs new tires, boom, gone. You build it back up to $500 over 2 months. Then your laptop dies, poof, back to zero. You scrape together $800 again. Then your dog gets sick, or your insurance premium goes up, or your phone screen shatters, or literally any one of the 1,000 things that can go wrong in modern life decides to happen. This isn't building wealth. This is playing financial whack-a-mole, where every time you think you're winning, life smacks you back down to start. You're not investing in your future. You're paying the ongoing subscription fee for existing as an adult human being. And your brain knows this. That's why it doesn't feel good. Think about it this way. When you have $800 saved, you're not wealthy. You're just temporarily not broke. There's a massive psychological difference between those two states, and your subconscious mind is way too smart to be fooled by small numbers with big dreams attached to them. This is why financial advice that tells you to celebrate small wins often backfires. Your brain isn't stupid. It knows that $400 isn't going to change your life. It knows that you're still one bad Tuesday away from being financially screwed. So instead of feeling accomplished, you feel like you're playing pretend with yourself. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's a specific dollar amount where this entire dynamic flips. And it's not what most people think. It's not $100,000 or even $50,000. The magic number where saving stops feeling pointless and starts feeling powerful is exactly $10,000. And the psychological shift that happens when you cross this threshold is so dramatic that it essentially turns you into a different person. Let me explain what I mean by defensive versus offensive money. Yeah, when you have less than $10,000 saved, every dollar is playing defense. It's protecting you from disaster, not building toward opportunity. You're not thinking about investing or growing wealth. You're thinking about survival. Will this be enough if my car breaks down? What happens if I lose my job? Can I make it through 1 month without income? This defensive mindset is exhausting because it's rooted in fear and scarcity. You're constantly worried about losing what little you have rather than excited about growing it. And fear is a terrible motivator for long-term behavior change. It might get you to save for a few months, but it won't sustain you through years of wealth building. But something magical happens when you hit $10,000. Suddenly, you're not just surviving anymore. You're truly operating. $10,000 is enough to handle most emergencies without wiping you out completely. It's enough to take a calculated risk. It's enough to invest in yourself or an opportunity. For the first time, your money stops being purely defensive and starts being offensive. This shift changes everything about how you think and behave. When you have $10,000, you start asking different questions. Instead of, how do I avoid disaster? You start asking, how do I grow this? Instead of being paralyzed by the fear of losing money, you become energized by the possibility of making more. Here's something that will probably surprise you. The difference between having $1,000 and $5,000 feels negligible to your brain. Both amounts leave you fundamentally vulnerable. Both amounts require the same defensive mindset. Both amounts can be wiped out by a single moderate emergency. But the difference between having $5,000 and $10,000 feels enormous. That extra $5,000 represents crossing from the vulnerability zone into the stability zone. It's the difference between hoping nothing goes wrong and being prepared when something does. This is why so many people give up on saving before they ever see real results. They save for 6 months, get to $3,000, don't feel any different about their financial situation, and conclude that saving money doesn't work. But they quit right before the psychological breakthrough happens. It's like someone trying to get in shape who works out for 2 months, doesn't see dramatic visual changes, and decides exercise is pointless. They quit right before their body would have started showing real results. The same thing happens with money. People quit saving right before their brain would have started feeling the psychological benefits. The really cruel irony is that the first $10,000 is the hardest money you'll ever save, but it's also the most important. It requires the most discipline because you get the least immediate gratification. Every dollar feels like a struggle because you don't feel meaningfully different whether you have $2,000 or $4,000 saved. But here's what most people don't realize. Once you cross that $10,000 threshold, saving becomes exponentially easier. Not just because you have more money working for you through compound interest, but because your entire psychology around money changes. You go from feeling like a victim of financial circumstances to feeling like someone who controls their financial destiny. This psychological shift creates a positive feedback loop. When you feel in control of your money, you make better financial decisions. When you make better decisions, you save more money faster. When you save more money, you feel even more in control. The momentum builds on itself. But before you reach $10,000, you're stuck in the opposite loop. You feel powerless, so you make desperate or impulsive decisions. Poor decisions lead to less money saved. Less money saved makes you feel more powerless. It's a vicious cycle that traps most people in permanent financial mediocrity. The $10,000 threshold isn't arbitrary. It represents something much deeper than just a number in your bank account. It represents crossing from a scarcity identity to an abundance identity, from someone who doesn't have enough to someone who has options, from someone who reacts to financial problems to someone who prevents them. When most people think about this $10,000 milestone, they imagine it's about the money itself. They think it's about compound interest or investment opportunities or having enough cash to weather storms. And while those things matter, they're missing the real transformation that happens. At the $10,000 mark isn't really about money at all. It's about identity. It's about who you believe yourself to be and what you believe yourself capable of. When you have $800 saved, you see yourself as someone who's trying to save money. When you have $10,000 saved, you see yourself as someone who is good with money. That difference in identity drives every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Think about it like learning to drive. When you're 15 years old taking driving lessons, every turn feels dangerous. Every lane change requires intense concentration, and you white-knuckle the steering wheel for the entire trip. You're not really driving. You're just trying not to crash while moving forward slowly. But once you've been driving for a few years, something shifts. You don't think about each individual action anymore. You just get in the car and drive. The identity has changed from someone who's learning to drive to someone who is a driver. The same psychological shift happens with money at the $10,000 mark. Before $10,000, you're someone who's trying to be good with money. After $10,000, you're someone who is good with money. And people who are good with money make fundamentally different choices than people who are trying to be good with money. Here's where most financial advice gets it completely wrong. They tell you to start small, celebrate tiny wins, and gradually build habits. Save $50 a month, then $100, then maybe $200 if you're feeling ambitious. This approach sounds reasonable, but it's psychologically backwards. When you save $50 a month, you'll reach $10,000 in about 16 years. 16 years of feeling like your savings don't matter. 16 years of watching your progress get wiped out by routine life events. 16 years of wondering if you're wasting your time. Most people's willpower doesn't last 16 months, let alone 16 years. This is why aggressive saving beats gradual saving every single time when you're starting from zero. If you can find a way to save $1,000 a month instead of $50, you'll hit that psychological breakthrough in 10 months instead of 16 years. And once you hit it, maintaining momentum becomes natural instead of forced. I know what you're thinking. $1,000 a month? Who has an extra $1,000 lying around? And you're right, most people don't. But most people also approach this problem completely backwards. They try to save what's left over after they've lived their normal life. They pay all their bills, buy everything they usually buy, live exactly how they've always lived, and then try to save whatever crumbs remain. This is like trying to lose weight by eating normally and hoping you accidentally consume fewer calories, when it might work occasionally, but it's not a strategy. It's wishful thinking with a budget spreadsheet attached. The people who successfully break through the $10,000 barrier flip this equation. They decide how much they're going to save first, then they figure out how to live on what's left. They make saving the priority and lifestyle the variable instead of the other way around. This means making some choices that might feel extreme in the short term. Moving back in with parents for 6 months, taking on a side hustle that eats up every weekend, selling the car and taking the bus, eating cheap meals like rice and beans for 3 months. These aren't permanent lifestyle changes. They're temporary sacrifices with a specific goal in mind. But here's what's fascinating about human psychology. The same person who thinks saving $1,000 a month is impossible will spend $1,000 a month on a car payment without blinking. They'll drop $800 on a vacation, $300 on dinners out, $200 on subscriptions they forgot they had. The money is there, it's just flowing in different directions. The difference between people who break through the $10,000 barrier and people who stay stuck below it isn't income, it's intensity. Most people treat saving like a nice-to-have hobby they'll get around to when life calms down, but life never calms down. There's always another expense, another emergency, another reason to postpone building wealth. People who break through treat saving like their financial life depends on it, because it does. They understand that every month they spend below $10,000 is another month of feeling financially powerless, another month of being one disaster away from catastrophe, another month of watching other people build wealth while they tread water. There's also something else happening below the $10,000 mark that makes saving feel particularly brutal. It's what I call the momentum illusion. You feel like you're making progress when you're really just running in place. Let's say you save $200 a month for 6 months. You now have $1,200 saved. That feels like real progress, right? You've been disciplined, you've sacrificed, you've done everything the financial experts told you to do. You should feel good about this. But then your refrigerator dies. Replacing it costs $800. Suddenly you're back down to $400, 6 months of work, gone in one afternoon. And here's the psychological trap. It doesn't feel like you lost $800. It feels like you lost 6 months of your life. This is why people get so frustrated with early stage saving. The emotional cost of losing progress feels much higher than the actual dollar amount lost. When you're operating with small numbers, every setback feels devastating because it represents such a large percentage of your total progress. But when you have $15,000 and need to spend $800 on a refrigerator, it barely registers emotionally. You're annoyed, sure, but you don't feel like months of work just disappeared. The same $800 expense hits completely differently depending on your context. This is another reason why aggressive saving beats gradual saving. The faster you can get through the vulnerable zone where every emergency wipes out months of progress, the sooner you can start building real momentum. Every month you spend below $10,000 is a month where you're psychologically vulnerable to giving up. The people selling gradual wealth building programs don't want you to understand this because it undermines their entire business model. They want you to believe that slow and steady wins the race, that building wealth is a marathon, not a sprint, that you should be patient and trust the process. But here's what they're not telling you. The first $10,000 isn't a marathon. It's a sprint across a battlefield. You want to get through it as quickly as possible because every day you spend in the danger zone is another day you might get taken out by financial shrapnel. Once you're past $10,000, then you can slow down and enjoy the marathon. Then you can celebrate small wins and build sustainable habits. Then you can think long-term and make gradual improvements. But trying to marathon your way through the first $10,000 is like trying to stroll casually through a minefield. This completely changes how you should think about those early dollars. They're not your savings, they're your escape fund. You're not building wealth yet. You're buying your way out of financial vulnerability. Every dollar you save before hitting $10,000 is a dollar spent on purchasing psychological safety. And here's the thing that makes this whole process even more psychologically brutal. Your brain is constantly calculating whether your current savings would actually change your life if you spent it. When you have $3,000 saved, your brain runs this calculation automatically. Could I buy something that would meaningfully improve my daily experience, or a nicer apartment, a better car, a vacation that would create lasting memories? The answer is always no. $3,000 can't buy you anything that would fundamentally alter your existence. So your brain starts questioning why you're hoarding this money, like a dragon sitting on a pile of coins that's too small to sleep on comfortably. Meanwhile, you watch other people spend $3,000 on a weekend in Vegas, and they come back with stories, photos, and experiences. You've got $3,000 in a banking app you're afraid to open because seeing that number reminds you of all the fun you're not having. This is the psychological torture of early stage saving. You're sacrificing present enjoyment for future security, but the amount you've saved isn't actually enough to provide real security. So you get neither the fun nor the safety. You're stuck in financial purgatory where you're too responsible to blow the money and too broke to feel secure. Your brain starts doing really destructive math. If I spent this $3,000 on a trip to Europe, at least I'd have memories and experiences. Right now I have a number in an app that doesn't change how I live, where I work, or what I can afford. Maybe I should just spend it and start over later when I'm making more money. This is why so many people cycle through the same pattern. Save for 6 months, get discouraged, blow the money on something fun, feel guilty, start saving again. They're not weak or undisciplined. They're responding rationally to a situation where delayed gratification isn't providing any actual gratification. But here's what happens when you push through to $10,000. Suddenly, that same calculation your brain runs starts giving you different answers. $10,000 can change your life. Not permanently, but meaningfully. You could quit a job you hate and take time to find something better. You could move to a different city. You could invest in education or training that increases your earning potential. For the first time, the number in your account represents real options, not just a slightly thicker cushion against disaster. Your brain stops questioning why you're saving because it can finally see the point. The delayed gratification starts feeling like actual gratification instead of just delayed spending. This is why people who hit $10,000 almost never go back to living paycheck to paycheck. It's not because they've suddenly developed superhuman willpower. It's because they've crossed the threshold where saving money starts feeling logical instead of masochistic. There's also something else that happens at $10,000 that nobody talks about. You stop being afraid of your own money. When you have $800 saved, you're constantly worried about accidentally spending it. Every purchase becomes a mental calculation. Can I afford this without dipping into my savings? Will this put me back below my emergency fund target? You develop this weird relationship with money where you're simultaneously proud of having it and terrified of touching it. It's like keeping a pet tiger. Sure, it's impressive, but you can't really relax around it. But when you have $10,000, money becomes a tool instead of a burden. You can spend $500 without checking your balance 3 times first. You can make financial decisions based on value instead of fear. You finally understand why wealthy people seem so calm about money. It's not because they have millions, it's because they crossed the threshold where money stopped controlling them and they started controlling it. So if you're sitting there with $2,000 saved, feeling like you're wasting your time, you're not crazy. You're just not there yet. Those dollars aren't building wealth. They're building the foundation that wealth will eventually stand on. Every dollar before 10,000 is buying you permission to become someone who's good with money instead of someone who's just trying to survive it. The first $10,000 isn't about the money. It's about proving to yourself that you can do hard things when the payoff isn't immediately obvious. It's about developing the identity of someone who makes long-term decisions even when short-term thinking feels more comfortable. It's about crossing from financial defense to financial offense. And once you make that crossing, everything changes. Not just your bank account, but how you see yourself and what you believe you're capable of. That $10,000 becomes the down payment on a completely different financial life. If this video helped you understand why those early dollars feel so pointless, and more importantly, why you should keep going anyway, hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you are in your journey to 10,000.